this is my review of Mob Psycho 100. Okay, so in this episode, Mob is a bit more vocal with what he's thinking in this episode. So it starts off with when Reagan made his website last episode, and in this episode, he starts seeing results. So his first client is a guy who wants him to put a curse on another guy, but Reagan insists that that's not how it works and that he won't take the job. But when the guy doesn't leave him alone, he gives him a fake curse and tells him to just stuff it in his pocket. And so long as it's in his pocket, the guy will be cursed. At which point the guy leaves, but tells Reagan before he leaves that if he finds out that the curse is fake, he'll put a real curse on Reagan, and then leaves. Mob, who watched this entire exchange take place, begins to question if what Reagan did was in fact the right thing, pointing out that if that curse was in fact not real, and the guy never found out, then would he just spend the rest of his life wondering? And asks Reagan if he's capable of dealing with the guilt of that. At which point Reagan looks at Mob a little concerned, pointing out that this is one of the few times that Mob has actually shown his opinion. The second job that they have is actually a bit more important. They're asked by a woman to investigate somebody who appears to be stalking her. And at first she thought it was an actual stalker, but then she realized that she was on the 5th floor and the guy was peering into her window, so she realized it might not even be a person. But after a brief investigation, start to look into things and realize that it might not be a spirit, mainly because spirits, at least according to Dimple, don't really have any sexual desire whatsoever. So it couldn't be a spirit because it's not like they can reproduce if they wanted to. But then they find out that that it actually was a guy, an Esper who lived next door, who was actually stalking the woman, and for lack of a better word, he believes he was in love with her, and although it was one-sided because he was kind of stalking her a little bit. After which point Reagan calls the police and he's hauled off to prison. At which point Mob pipes up that he realizes that humans and spirits are treated so differently and wonders why that is. And then they get back to the office where they meet 3 teenagers who all want to the group collectively wants to take a picture at a haunted location as their last thing they do before they get off break. So Reagan decides to tag along with Mob in tow and takes them to a haunted house where they promptly take the picture. At which point Reagan asks them for payment, but they stiff him because they don't think it actually qualified as a job. So they stiff him and then leave the group there, and Reagan and the rest decide to hitchhike in a truck and go back home. The next day, Mob is confronted by a bully who wants his lunch money, but due to some intervention between the Body Improvement Club and also Ritsu and Dimple, who were there for some reason, the bullies eventually leave Mob alone. At which point everybody tells Mob that he needs to learn to stand up for himself, pointing out that he has the power to do it. At which point Mob begins to contemplate why he has these powers to begin with. But then later that day, when Mob goes to his job, he finds out that the 3 teenagers are back, and they found somebody in the picture and they want it exorcised. And Reagan initially refuses, pointing out that he could just Photoshop the spirit out of the picture, and that would be that. But they insist that they want a full-on exorcism, and also apologize for stiffing Reagan the other time. So Reagan decides to help them out. He brings Mob with him and asks him to exorcise the spirits. But when Mob finds out that they're not necessarily evil and are in fact just a family who want to exist peacefully, Mob kind of freezes up, unsure of what to do at this stage. And Reagan begins to see Mob's inner turmoil. The teenagers couldn't care less and just badger Reagan to do something. After realizing that Mob is conflicted about whether or not to exorcise the spirits, and also that Mob is wondering where the line would be drawn. If he decided to save this family, then what would happen to the clients and vice versa. At which point Reagan realizes that the best way to save Mob is to throw some salt around, say that he did his job, and then take their money. So at which point he realizes that Mob is different because he has things that other normal human beings can't do, and he wonders that if Mob wonders what would happen if Mob just kind of decided to exercise humans, because he realizes that for him the line is kind of blurred. To him, humans and spirits should be treated with the same respect, but they ultimately aren't because people just believe that spirits are, since they're dead, they don't deserve as much respect. But that's not true at all. We know that for a fact. Mob even contemplates that to himself before he goes to sleep, and also contemplates that if he did decide to do that, if he did decide to start exercising humans instead of spirits, would there be anybody to stop him? But he doesn't think about it too long before he goes to sleep. But this episode brings up an interesting question. To an Esper, at least in the world of Mob Psycho 100, humans and spirits are basically identical, with the only difference between being that one is alive and one isn't. So it does beg the question of where does somebody with that kind of power draw the line? So yeah, this episode does start to humanize spirits, because up to this point we've just seen Mob exercising them without much of a care in the world, but here it's not so clear cut. He has to exercise a loving family who just want to exist by themselves. Hell, Dimple tries and fails to convince the father to attack the clients by turning evil, but he doesn't. He ultimately just wants to see his family safe, and ultimately can't bring himself to do something so terrible in front of his child. Because the thing is, it's just like there is a line, and Mob wasn't willing to cross it in this episode. So that makes the question of, are there going to be other spirits in the series that aren't necessarily evil and just trying to live their afterlives? So yeah, this episode was interesting mainly for that reason. It just kind of blurred the line. It just kind of blurred the lines between a human and a spirit just a little bit, because humans and spirits have basically the same desires. Spirits used to be human, so by all accounts they're human in all but name. So yeah, that's what's interesting about this episode. It just kind of blurs the line between the two, and it begs the question of if Mob did decide to exercise humans, what would happen? But yeah, this episode just mainly brought that question up. It's one of the more interesting questions this show has brought up, because the show does like to dabble in the psychological and stuff like that. It does like to make you think a little bit, but this episode does beg the question: what exactly is the difference between a human and a spirit, other than the fact that spirits are dead? But this episode was interesting. I enjoyed it. So if you guys didn't watch this episode of Mob Psycho 100, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Again, only a couple bucks a month. So be sure to support me, and I'll help support you guys in turn. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!